in the position you're in the industry that you're in, I guess we can call it, the decisions you're making are directly affecting a lot of people.
Yes, you're right.
They aren't abstract concepts.
Yeah.
These are
No. These are tangible, and I think that's something we always try and keep in mind. We are dealing with people, and we're looking at reality. Mm-hmm. Let's look at functionality. This is a really nice idea, but it functionally, And so I keep saying, how is that going to make the situation better? Mm-hmm. What, or at least maintain it in a healthy state? Functionality. It's all very nice. It's like you go to a series of meetings, right? And you come out and say, that was a really great idea. That was a nice meeting, and it works well in the city, but it ain't going to do diddly out here.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find where's the functional piece, because there's no point in putting something in place that doesn't have a hoot of a chance to realize anything. And you're not looking at rocket science here. We're not looking at creating, the next unmanned mission to the moon. We're looking at what will help people in a real sense. You can't help everybody. No. And you're not going to have the perfect solutions. I mean, you need to go in with a sense of reality.
Yeah.
That what is real. Would I like to do this? Oh, yeah, I'd love to, but I need another $1 million in the budget. So what am I faced with? I'm doing what I need to do with what I've got now. Yeah. I need to make it work the best I can. If it doesn't, then you say, okay, that didn't work. What did I learn from it? Let's pick ourselves up and carry on and move. I think part of the issue, challenge with today, people making decisions, personal decisions, is that sense of, and this could simply be an age thing, and I am speaking from an age perspective. I'm in my 7th decade. I get age, right? I'm starting to. There's people a lot more wiser than I and older than I. But that things don't always work, okay? So now what do? You find a reason, you find something else, you go forward, okay? There's a very old movie from the 20s. It's a musical, and it says, you get knocked down, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. And essentially, that's the approach I take. If it doesn't work, okay, what didn't work? We don't want to replicate that again. But where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. We still need to try and address this. Is there something we can do? So it's a matter of having vision, trying to figure out how to realize the vision, and accept the consequences of whatever decision you make.
Yeah.
And those, I think, are key piece. And when you see any decision makers, whether or not they identify it as that, they might identify it as something different. The reality is those 3 components are all there.
Yeah, they have to be.
Thomas Edison, after 1,000 experiments, finally generated the light bulb, and a smart reporter said, so what did you think about all those failures? And he said, none of those are failures. The first one led to the second one, led to the hundreds, et cetera, et cetera. I learned something and here I am. They weren't failures. They were part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that failure is part of the learning process. Mm-hmm. Not everything works. We've been really fortunate and very successful here. And Neepawa has gotten where it's gotten because people, not just me, and certainly not me, have made decisions with vision to look forward and followed through on those decisions. And that's, I think, the real testament to a lot of the success that's happening here, because we've looked at a whole wave of brand new people to this country coming into a community where a lot of people have been here for more than one generation or more. And we have found a way of living together and moving through and dealing with it. Is it perfect? Good Lord, no. But you can't point to me a perfect place.
Yeah.
That's just what happens.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do. So
I think it's a really interesting and important bit of specificity there, in that Neepawa is a town. It is not a city. It is not an urban center. The needs here are going to be different.
Yes, they are. And I will be honest with you, to some degree, living in a smaller center, you are better able to address those needs. Mm-hmm. When you take a look at the larger environment, you're seeing so many people. Where do you start? Unless you compartmentalize into small little areas and sections, how do you impact a whole city? Because you've got different groups in different areas. Here, I mean, groups are intermingled.
Yeah.
You know, and so we have to find a way of making that work. So I think we are fortunate in that size. We're still very lucky in rural Manitoba that we have another number of small communities that are still fairly safe, are still, you're able to get around. And that's one of the things that keeps coming to me with newcomers is I can finish my work at 10 o'clock at night and I can walk home and not feel worried.
Yeah.
My kids can walk to school. They don't have to be driven.
Yeah.
You know, we can go in. Now, anything can happen. We've all seen that. We just had that episode where somebody was running around with a gun not that long ago. I mean, it can happen.
It can happen.
But the truth is, generally speaking, this is a great place to raise kids. We have a really good school system, supportive. Our healthcare system. I mean, they're doing amazing things with their limited resources at this time. Our municipal, I mean, everybody's stepping up and trying. Nobody's saying, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think a lot of people, if they came across that, would just say, well, too bad. You know. So it's anything like this is a group effort. I'm not making decisions in isolation.
Yeah.
I make decisions as it relates to the world around me, as it could relate to maybe this television station or the media or the employment community or whatever.
Wow.
It's not an isolated decision just for us.
Yeah.
It's always, how is this going to impact on the clientele we're working with? Because that's really what we're there for, to help people find out how and where they fit in their new country.
And just looking numbers wise, and we are talking, it's mostly a Filipino population in Neepawa.
Yep.
That is one of the advantages here, is that we're largely dealing with a one.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there are pros and cons to that, without question. But like any country, sections of the country operate differently.
Regional. Yeah.
They're regional, right?
Yeah.
So you have regional differences.
Yeah.
But we also are now getting, again, because before the onset of the increase in the Filipinos coming over, there were Eastern European countries, Ukrainians, Poles, Russians, people from East Tamil, Koreans, a number of people coming here. That moved, and it could be just one of those natural progressions. Now the Filipinos, but now we're seeing more coming from Africa. We're seeing more coming from East India, a real influx of East Indian people from in the area. People are moving here. The trick is going to be, how do you deal with the immigration that comes over?
Yeah.
We're seeing challenges with immigration, undocumented immigration, unchanneled immigration, really having severe impact in countries all over the world.
Yeah.
And countries are in tumult, and people are leaving. I forget the number of even just refugees, let alone immigrants leaving, is incredible when you take a look at it. For population in some countries, but then some countries are doing very well. It's a challenging thing. Not everybody's used to it. European Union is struggling simply because when it was Europe and not a union, there were borders in each country.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. We see a number of people who see Canada as, one, a really good place to come, two, as a stepping stone to get to the United States.
Yes.
And we've seen tragedy happen around that.
Yeah.
People coming in uncontrolled immigration patterns run the risk of being subject to traffickers, to people who just dump them in the middle of Manitoba in February at 40 below, and look what disastrous things happen.
That tragedy more than
or
once
leave
here.
leave them on the shores of the St. Lawrence and let them go. And or in other countries, and that's the sad part. The truth is, any country can only handle so many.
Yeah.
If their jobs are there and people come in, and that's why Canada is noted for its immigration policies. People look to how we do things.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating thing because it's never the same. It's always
Yeah.
evolving.
Are a lot of those things impacting us in Neepawa specifically? I mean, certainly I think some of them.
A bit. Not to the same extent other
Certainly
places
not,
are.
yeah.
But we see it, and we see the impact. But no, the vast majority of our people are coming
Yeah.
through that economic immigration
Yeah.
stream, and it's working. And they're able to bring their families over, and they're
Yeah.
able to get their permanent resident status. And the nice thing we've seen, permanent resident status, it means that when you're a permanent resident, you can live and work anywhere in Canada. And we see people certainly leave. They go to hook up with friends in other provinces or other jobs. But we've seen a tremendous number stay.
Hey.
That's why we have the population growth, because people want to stay here.
Yeah.
They're happy here. And we're seeing that new generation being born and growing up here, or have come here in their, just
Early
as
years,
a young youth, and now our early years, and we're seeing that kind of thing. And it's interesting, you get dynamics like graduating out of high school. I want to take a year off. Well, no. Some cultures, you don't do that. You go straight into school. No, I've got things with my buddies, things with my girlfriends. This is what I'm going to do. And then, some cultures, you find that families move when children move.
Yeah.
And children are saying, no.
You don't need to come with me to university.
No, that's
I'm
right.
Fine.
And if you do move to I'm not living with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look at that.
That's very much a cultural thing.
That's
here,
a
though.
cultural thing, but it's a shock.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way things are. Sorry, I probably banged the microphone. But have been. And so there are things about coming to a new culture we don't think about necessarily.
No.
And it's sort of, because that never was a thought probably on the vast majority of families' minds when they get here and they're faced with that. They probably never even thought of that.
Yeah.
That's not what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do. Well, and so these are all things, and there are a multitude of others that need to be taken into concern. And these are some of the things that we try and help people work through.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy, because you're seeing a change that's not culturally what you've done, but that's part of what your child has embraced as part of the new culture, and so there's that kind of thing.
It is one arm of the settlement process.
You bet.
Is integrating
You bet.
in there. Let's take a look at then some of the specific things that we're doing within settlement services in Neepawa, within this office, the kind of programs. Because as you said, we've gone from like 2 people to 17 people. So what are these people doing? What kind of programs are we running?
Well, first of all, probably one of the programs we have is generally the first intake, which also does volunteer coordination. So newcomers can volunteer, community members can volunteer. We're really building up that program more. But our really primary entry program is a settlement program, where where our staff, we have 2 staff in settlement, and they're helping people. What are your needs here? What do you need? Well, I need to get my mental health card. I need to, what about child tax benefit credits? All those kinds of things to help people with that. They also determine things like what kind of information sessions. We can get a session for Canada Revenue. We can have the police come in. We can all sorts of things. So that's part of what happens there. It's identifying what are your basic needs. Then we have an employment officer. So I'd like my person who's just come over to get a job. So a referral can be made on site to our employment officer, who provides information. We've got some workshops, some information sessions about the work culture diversity. And with that, we also work with employers about workplace diversity.
It goes both ways.
It works both ways,
Absolutely.
because a lot of employers, we want to hire, but we don't understand. So we're doing work with that. Then from there, it may be we have children in school, so we have our Settlement Workers in Schools program. And we work within 4 school divisions: Pine Creek, Beautiful Plains, Rolling River, and Park West. We have been.
That program's been a huge success.
It's
from
been
its start.
wonderful, we've got great relationships with our education people. It's a real partnership. It's a real collaboration. Then we have our English language classes. We can teach to a certified level, a Canadian language benchmark level of 8. Newcomers, English for all permanent residents, it's free. We offer 5 classes during the week. I have a couple of excellent teachers. They've been teaching for quite a while with us. They're experienced teachers.
Yeah.
One taught a lot in China. The other is a retired. He has resource background. He's worked on reserves, a variety of things. Just a wonderful, wonderful dynamic. Then we introduced this past, back in last September, 2 preschool programs. So one is working with children from ages 3 to 5, hippie program to prepare them for transitioning into kindergarten. And a new sort of pilot project for one that hasn't been done before, and that's a preschool program for people who are prenatal to the age of 3. And both have just been amazing. And the engagement on the part of the families and what they're learning, and the hippie program is a home visitor program working with the mom to work with things to help prepare the child. The early years program is working with parents as a group and dealing with parent issues. It can be anything from discipline to understanding certain systems, to attachment, to child development, to healthy mental and your preschooler mental well-being, parental mental anything, and it's driven to a large extent by the parents. So some wonderful stuff happening. So basically, we have services that go from prenatal up until when you pass away.
I mean, are there senior services within Settlement at this point?
No, but that's certainly a possibility, largely because we have very few senior newcomers. That's going to change as time goes. In another 10 years, 5 years, we will have more of those. And as more people bring over their aging parents and that, is looking at that. And we've got systems in here. For example, we've got people out of the hand office. We've got things like the men's shed. There are other kinds of organizations. We have international organizations. There's a fairly large contingent of Masons that come from the Philippines. You know, there are other kinds of fraternities, sororities, that kind of thing that come into play as well. So anything's on the cards. Right now, there has not been a pressing need. We've got, for example, within the LGBTQ community, they're very active.
It's been wonderful to see.
They're very contained. They're cool. I mean, we're there to help if they need help, but they've not needed any.
Self-organized and started doing stuff.
And I think that's absolutely wonderful because that's integration. That's integration. I mean, we certainly know come in through the office to get other kinds of things helped with, like different kinds of change in forms or updating things. Okay. You know, that's been lovely because at one point I started to probe and say, are we missing something here? And the truth is, they've got their act together. It's wonderful. It's really nice to see. And when I looked at the Filipino Heritage, most recent one, and they were co-sponsors along with the new Filipino organization, I thought, you know what? That's just great. That's perfect. That's what we want to see happening.
Because we certainly have a critical mass of people here to be able to do things like that. I think the latest numbers I heard were within the population of Neepawa, about 35 to 40% is of Filipino background now, and within the schools, 60 to 70%.
Yep, I would say 30% is on the light side. Yes, both, and for a long time now, for 3 or 4 years, we've seen that 70% is newcomer students. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it's going. I mean, it's very interesting, and therein lies the thing: the difference in school systems.
Oh, absolutely.
All over. And that's why the Settlement Workers in Schools program is there, because some adapt very well. And some don't.
And we're not talking about people who are starting at the beginning of the school year. These are people coming in, middle of the month, middle of the week.
And one of the challenging things, not even they're coming in at the entry level. Coming in, going into grade 11 or grade 12, and that's a challenge because it's a major change. You want to go into university, but not everybody coming in at that late stage has can get the accreditation that they need. They may need to take another year just to make sure that happens. There are all sorts of nuances here. But the school's right on top of that. They've got a sense of what's happening.
And I've had them in here and talked to Jason Young, and they really are very aware of
totally
of these things.
They're a great partner to work with. I mean, the conversations back and forth between our Swiss staff and the schools are always calling and helping with different things, and it's really nice to see.
Yeah, because this isn't a small population in the school. As we said, this is the majority population in the school.
And we're seeing an increase in the newcomer population in places like Russell, Hamiota, Shoal Lake, Minnedosa. We're seeing it in a number of smaller communities. Like we become from small to, in our area, we're probably one of the largest small communities outside of Winnipeg, behind Steinbach and some of the other Portage and that.
Our growth rate is substantial.
It's been pretty impressive, and there have been dips and doodles, but the thing is, I think overall Neepawa has to nod its head and say, you know what, we've really tried, and we've tried to step up to what's happening and move with the flow.
And certainly saying that you do not work in isolation. You are in partnership with a vast number of other people and organizations in town.
Yeah, you have to be. And I learned that from family service working back in the day. If you didn't have network, if you didn't collaborate, you didn't get very far. You were very limited. You needed to know your area. You needed to know who to call in another community. You needed to see who you could partner with, and we partner with corrections. We partner with a ton of different things for information, for a variety of things. We've hosted workshops. We've actually had allowed them to do interviews or recruiting. Anything that makes sense, you need to be open to. You need to be open to things. You need to be receptive to thinking outside the box. I never played well in a sandbox. I like thinking outside the box. So that lends itself to saying, oh, that's an interesting idea. How would that work? Okay, you know what? Let's give it a try. It'll work or it won't work. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't, we've learned something.
Yeah, and this goes right from recreation all the way up to major infrastructure.
We're seeing a change in recreation. Look at that recreation study that was done and what came out of it.
Yeah.
It said the population here now wants a different kind of recreation. We've got pickleball courts. We've got basketball courts. Look at the hiking trails we have. Look at the bike park we have. Some things that traditionally we wouldn't have seen.
Yeah.
We still have our rink. We've expanding our swimming pool. It's
still could use more basketball courts. We've added 4 of them?
Oh, I know.
And they're in use.
Totally, and it's very interesting, very interesting.
But it's interesting to think about. It's when people within settlement, it's every aspect of life.
Yes, totally.
From your sewage to your recreation, basically.
Well, and we are often the first point of entry when people are in crisis.
Yes.
What do we do? Where do we go? Who do we see? And that's just a factor of working with people. You're glad they're coming to somewhere they feel safe.
Yeah.
And then your job is, are you safe? Who needs to be part of this process? Who can you go to for the help you need? That's part of what another aspect we do. Not frequently, but we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the sort of biggest challenges you're seeing now as opposed to maybe 10 years ago?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I wasn't prepared for that. So I'm thinking challenges. I think one of the challenges we see is we need to be able to respond to different situations quicker.
Yeah.
There is the challenge that I'm seeing from service delivery. When you're seeing a lot of people and you're doing similar things all the time, you can get trapped into the cycle of complacency. Done this before, here we go. we're always talking to each other, reminding, look at what's happening through the lens of the person that's sitting in front of you. Mm-hmm. Remember, not everything we do necessarily is correct. We can change. Touch basing with ourselves, doing mental health. I think that's one of the things. It can be extremely stressful when you're working with people, especially if they're having challenges and they're stressed and everything like that. COVID was a very interesting time for everybody.
In all kinds of ways.
We just come out of a post-COVID year, just finished one, and we're moving into the second year after COVID, and we're seeing more movement. We saw a lot of disengagement even in that first post-COVID year.
Yeah.
People are frightened, people afraid, hesitant. That's slowly coming back.
Yeah.
So challenges, I think just meeting the daily needs and dealing with making sure that the mental well-being of staff and of clients are well, and just dealing with the vicissitudes of life. Things come up. We got to deal with this. What do we do? How do we deal with it? That kind of thing.
You don't necessarily know what the next thing's going to be. Maybe it is that meteor strike that's going to come, and you're.
Well, there we go. We're. I mean, at least they've settled the Liquor Commission strike.
Yes.
And I already have
So
my
we're prepared
driver's
for the
license.
future now.
Yeah, so I can drive and I can drink, and there we go. Yeah. No, I'm only kidding. We're going through that phase, and that's a post-COVID phenomenon. I feel we're seeing a lot of people saying we want to work from home. Well, in our business, that ain't going to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
in
a
an
very
emergency or
face-to-face.
crisis, a snowstorm, but we're dealing with people.
Yeah.
And our people want a they don't want to do it virtually. They want to talk to somebody. They want to look somebody in the eye. They want to see a face, hear a voice. Right on. Yeah. So it's that's what I'd say. I've got to say I got a great group of people. They're keen. They come to me with all sorts of ideas. They're hardworking. I really, really appreciate them no end. They're what make it, not me.
Yeah.
They're the people that make it. They're the ones in the trenches. I didn't mention, I should. We go through a different grant. We have a temporary foreign worker who works now for the past year and a half. We've had that, and he's excellent. And we've able to capture that group that we hadn't when we got repatriated over.
Because it was all permanent residents.
It was all permanent residents. So he does an amazing job. And because he's in the same locale, we're able to share thoughts, share information. And the temporary foreign workers coming in see, so I got some. When I get PR, I'm not left. I'm just not hanging. I got somebody else I can go to.
You can transition to the next.
So
person.
it's really good. And as I said, we've never come into a difficult situation within the community to partner. Everybody we've ever approached us, we've been able to work with. A great group of people here.
Yeah.
You know.
So what is something? And I'm drawing this directly from job interview.
Okay.
Questions. What is something that maybe I should have asked you that I didn't know to ask you, that you'd like to talk about? Oh, I've really put you on the spot here.
But my incredible singing voice? No, I don't have one.
Because there maybe are aspects of the works I don't even know about, I wouldn't know to ask about.
That's a really good question, and it forces me to think, what should you know about? There's certain things you should definitely not know about me, and I'm not sharing those on camera. I guess it might have come across in things I've said. I firmly believe in giving back to the community you live in. I see community as a collection of us. It's not just me here, it's you here, it's Jeremy in there, it's the people out. We are us. A community is made up of people. Whether I know you or you know me is not the point. It's a fact. We're a collective. We're working together, and I guess I'm very committed to that giving back to the community. Yeah. This is the community that we live in. This community gets better or worse depending on how we interact with it. Yeah. So I guess that would be the only thing that I haven't vocally said. Yeah. I just think it's important. I think it's really important, and even in small ways. You don't have to be, a big leader in the community, because they're there definitely. You can be that small cog that just helps out ringing the kettle at Christmas time. That's helping out. That's
Yeah.
being part of the community, you know?
Thank you so much. That is a lovely thought to end on. Thank you for spending time with me today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It was a pleasure. It really was.
And thank all of you for joining us. We will see you again next time.